All right. So today, yes, sir. Oh yeah. If you missed the paper handout, here it is. There's a sign-in sheet going in. That's the problem. I have a tendency to start early. I always have done that. Um, so today we're going to go over that thing that I just handed out. So let me do my share screen here. And let's see, let's go with screen one. Thank you. So if somebody else comes in late, tell them to grab it off the chair here. The works, it's throwing around somewhere. All right, so I'm going to go here and I want to do this one, XPDF in class practice PDF, that one. Yes, I know. Thank you. Let's see if it displays. It should display. Are you going to display? Are you going to be a pain? No. I guess I could do it that way. It won't work as nicely. That's all right. We'll come back to that. I know I have it on the web somewhere, so see if I can find it. It's basically what you have in front of you. And you know what? It might be in Canvas. Let me take a quick look here. Yeah, I need to turn that in. I keep forgetting to turn in my syllabi and office hours. My office hours, for the most part, are going to be on Tuesdays. And then I'll make appointments if you need them. Like if you work nights or something, let me know and we can figure out some time. Okay, go in here, assignments, quizzes, I think. I haven't put it in here yet. Oh no! You will. I will put it in shortly. As you can tell, I'm a little rusty with this stuff. Haven't been in the classroom for 2 years. All right, now we go back to assignments. There it is. All right, here's the video, how to, and this is the same thing I just handed to. Yep, I do have it on the web, so we'll just open this. All right, now, what do we do here? Well, I teach you, this is an arithmetic way to convert binary decimal hex, because what ends up happening is that on the machines in front of you, okay, you all have a guest account. Just open the machine, log in as guest, and hit Control-Alt-T, and you'll get a prompt, okay? And I don't think I want to use that one. I think I'll use, I don't want to use that one either, okay? I'll use this one, okay? Control-C. So when you have your screen up, now this is a little hard to see, so let me make it a little bigger. Type in IP space A, and see what you see. You see all kinds of things. How many, let's see, let me rephrase this. What I'm discussing at this juncture is networking. This is our networking class, 240, I think, maybe it's 260. This is networking, how you get on the net. So your network has a unique IP address that stands for Internet Protocol, And it's probably this one, the one that says ENP or EN0 or ETH0. And notice the numbers that it has. 10, 18, 163, 32. And if you go home and you do this same thing on your machine at home, you're going to see 192, 168, 0.100 if you're on a Netgear, or 192, 168.1, 100 if you're on a Linksys. So you're going to have an IP address that is special, that is what we call non-routable, and it's ones and zeros over the wire. And what are those ones and zeros? They are just groups of bits. Now notice this is an IP6 address. This is the actual MAC address. This is hexadecimal. It's representing each character is 4 bits, which we call a nibble. So we have 1, 8. So we have a 1. And then we have an 8, which is, over here. And then that's how we convert them. Okay. And then the internet, IP addresses, which is why I chose, oh man, there we go, good. Why I chose 8 bits. Could I choose any number? I can choose 12 bits, I can choose 7 bits, I can choose 8 bits, but you see this 8-bit grouping most often in the world of computing. Yesterday or last week, ancient history, I showed you hexadecimal when I saved a document, didn't I? It's groups of 8 bits. That's all this quiz does, is it takes a number that you probably have seen, 192, 168, 0 dot something, your IP address at home, and you're converting it into binary to decimal, or decimal to binary. Okay, it's two-way street here. So how does this work? Well, it's really simple. Wherever there's a 1, you add. No, you can't use your cell phone. You should know how to add by now, right? Okay, so basically what this is doing is I see, oh, there's a 4, there's an 8, there's a 32, there's a 128. I add them together and I get 172. So this is a very simple, easy way to do representation of binary to decimal, okay? Not technically a conversion. We get that in the book, okay? This is just to get you the idea of what ones and zeros are about, okay? And then we convert it to hex. And the way you do it to hex is you convert to binary first, and then you use 4 bits at a time. That's a nibble. And if you look on that piece of paper I handed you, this should be somewhat review for everybody. If it's completely, totally new and you feel completely overwhelmed, come talk to me. I'll help you. Okay. This is one of the foundational linchpins of computing in general, is ones and zeros. Okay. And then we did another conversion here. And if I scroll down, you'll see going the other way. What's my binary? What's the decimal? Well, wherever there's a 1, you use this chart. Okay. Just wherever there's a 1, add it together. And then convert the binary, split this into 2 or 2 groups of 4. So that's an F, a 1. So the answer here is 1F. Can you see it? I see some blank stares. If you've had my classes before, this is exactly the same that I've given in my other classes, okay? No changes, nothing. It's to help you kind of, oh yeah, ones and zeros are kind of a thing in computing, especially as we get into assembler, okay? And then the last 2 pages are the ASCII chart of what we normally use in operating systems, Linux in particular, okay? So you can actually look and see how this is converted. So if there's something called decimal 7 or hexadecimal 7, we used to embed these in our code, and we'd send a beep to somebody's terminal, and it'd sit there and go beep about every 60 seconds. It drove people crazy. It was so much fun. But the thing is, it was just fun, malicious, impish fun. But that chart shows you what those different symbols are. Like when you hit a carriage return, what happened? Well, on Windows, it uses both carriage return and line feed. On Linux, it's just carriage return. And of course, Mac, they did everything different. They use just line feed. Okay. So these are how you can represent. So how many have seen this information here? I'll put it up here. And then how am I going to make that on the screen? I know what I'll do. I'll just do a Google search here. Google, and we'll go to, let's search on RDP. And let's dig down and notice my URL up here. How many have seen the %, 20% in their URL? Yeah. You've all seen it. You just don't remember you saw it. What is it? Look at your chart. Look up hex 20. Tell me what it is. Bingo. The space. So this is what we call encoding of a URL into Unicode so we can have it work. Spaces, I've never liked spaces in file names. And if you are a hardcore database admin, you also have a reprehension to spaces. You do not put spaces in column names. It gives you heartburn for years. And guess what? Microsoft kind of sort of supports it. It's a pain because you write your SQL and you have to rewrite it for a Microsoft Access database or a SQL Server. And the thing it is, people say, well, it's Microsoft compatible. That's not true. Microsoft is not compatible with Microsoft. Okay. There are things from Microsoft that do not work with Microsoft. Okay. Get used to it. All right. But that space is, when you look up here, you'll see something else. You'll see other things that represent an open closed paren or a pointy bracket, and it's in hexadecimal. So can you see a little bit of why you might want to know this stuff if you're going to make your career in the world of computing? Yeah, this is the low level. This is, this is all part of web dev, because when you put a URL in, you have to encode it to make sure it will get sent and parsed correctly. Because if you send something like desktop protocol with a space in it, is that going to work? It's not going to work at all. And notice it put a 20 in there. It tried to help me. My browser has some what we call brain dead code in it that's compensating for bad websites. Google, Firefox, Edge, they all have a lot of, I guess you would call it, bozo code to deal with bad websites that don't do things quite right. Okay. Even so, if you're Chrome, you want it to work on almost all websites, right? And I was talking to one of the Chrome developers at a conference, and I found what he had to say fascinating, is that they were working on Chrome and they can run a test against Chrome live across the entire planet to see how one individual function is being used within the Chrome ecosystem. Isn't that amazing? Scary, but amazing. Okay. So this is your homework for the binary decimal. Okay. This is pretty straightforward. And I put this little cheater chart here because when we count in binary, 1, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 1, 1, 0, 0. Okay. We all can count to 10. Well, how do I represent 8 bits with a single character? We use base 16. This is why we use hexadecimal. And you can see the pattern 0 to 111 is A or 0 through F. This is why you get your characters from 0 to F in hexadecimal, because F represents 1 nibble. Okay. And they still do that. Even in Unicode, you get 16 bits and 32 bits and 64-bit Unicode characters. It's still chunked in groups of 4. It's a nibble. Okay. They do that with IP6 and the whole 9 yards. Okay. All right. So notes, I want you to scribble somewhere. I want you to read. Am I going to test you on this? No. Then you're going to say, why do I need it? Does a job make sense? Because what I'm giving you today is pure 101 from the trenches. This is real world stuff. Okay. This Trojan source, read up on it. Read the paper, play with it, tinker with it, and see. It says the trick is use Unicode to trick. Pretty amazing how they did this. It's actually quite clever. And they are working on trying to solve this problem. And the stopgap is that they've used something called linters, where they can go in and check source code for individual problems. So this is all part of your testing harness. Okay. All right. Now what I want to do is I'm going to go here. We're going to talk about virtual machines. What am I doing here? All right, let's talk about virtual machines. Okay. Virtual machines are a way to put multiple operating systems on a particular piece of hardware. On my machine here, I have how many different flavors? Let's see here. You know, sometimes Microsoft makes everything easy, and as a consequence, it makes everything hard. All right, we have VirtualBox. Write that down. Okay, VirtualBox is one way to run another operating system on your machine. Okay. If you haven't heard of VirtualBox, that's why we're having this lecture today. We're talking about stuff that's specifically related to virtual machines, cloud, enterprise, the whole 9 yards. Okay. Now, are our jobs related to VirtualBox? No, not per se, because it's a client tool. It's one of those things you would use in testing, and it will come up in an interview. Do you use VirtualBox? What do you use for testing? And you say, well, VMware. VMware, the VMware workstation, is a job skill, because they are, I think, took it off? I think I had to take it off on this box. Yeah. I had to take it off this box because it didn't work. Also, I'll bring up their website. VMware is a commercial offering that we used to get for free, but you can use one called VMware Player, which is free. It lets you run one operating system at a time. So you can have Windows and load up Linux, and that's it. So you can run one Linux at a time. Okay. So you can run up Kali, but you have to turn that one off and then spin up Ubuntu and then they want to make it just irritating enough to get you to upgrade to buy their $300 product. Okay. VMware scales. You create a virtual machine, you push it to a ESXi server. Everybody can look at it as if it is a server on the network. No hardware. You have a virtual machine that everybody's using as the database server. You can see the optimizations there. When I was at Foster Farms, we eliminated, I think, 32 Windows NT workstations by implementing VMware. And PG&E paid for it because of the reduction in power that we could show we saved by getting rid of 32 individual boxes. You know, they were all running at about 1% CPU, so they weren't doing much. They were doing things like time card entry, gas boy logging. They weren't doing much. So we consolidated them all into one big piece of IBM hardware, and it was awesome. It had rollover, because then they have their management tool, which is called vSphere, which runs over several ESXi boxes. Okay. So write these terms down, folks. This is jobs. Okay. You're not going to be able to, you're saying, how do you know what to study when you don't know what you don't know? I'm giving you terms to look up. Okay. And I'm not going to quiz you on them. Okay. This is up to you. You have to own it. If you don't want to own it, I don't know, skin off my teeth. Okay. All right. Now let's talk about one of my favorite cloud providers, good old Linode. One of my former students was a top engineer there, or is. I don't know if he's still there. I think he's still there. But Linode runs their entire fleet. Everything on Linode runs on KVM. What's KVM? That stands for kernel virtualized manager. It's optimized for Linux. Technically speaking, again, buzzword click here. I need to write. I think this shows up in the little window. I think, you know how when you record in Zoom, it gives you the little thumbnail of the talking head of the person. So I've got it on the blackboard. So this should show up on the video. If it doesn't, well, you'll have to let me know. Okay. I better use a black pen though. I'm going to talk about this one, KVM and QEMU. Okay. So KVM, well, so much for black. KVM and QEMU. QEMU. KVM allows you to optimize Linux and Linux distributions. They have a $5 a month cloud play. That's where philipsd.com is. Linode, $5 a month. Okay. And I have my own server. I have to set up fail to ban. I have to set up the firewall. I have to do all the security things myself. I prefer that. Not everybody does. Other people like drag and drop. Let's make it work on Amazon. Amazon is its own thought process. So is Azure. So is Google Cloud. They all have similar concepts, but the implementation is very different. It would be like going from C++ to Lisp. Yeah, it's code, but you don't know what it does because you're not familiar with it. Okay. All right. Now, KVM is what Linode runs, or Linode. I've been pronouncing it wrong all these years. It's not Linode. It's not Linode. It's Linode, as in Linux. I was corrected. Is for other Linux kernels. So I can put a bunch of different Linux kernels. I can run Red Hat, I can run Debian, I can run OpenSUSE, I can run, you pick it. I can run TinyCore. But if I run on Windows, I need this little thing here called QEMU, which is its own world that allows you to let Windows run on KVM. Now, why do I want it on KVM? Linode runs their entire fleet, global fleet, on KVM. That's a lot of virtual machines. Okay. And I was talking to, his name is Jonathan. He's the guy that spearheaded the donation to the Jeremy Lab here. And he says, yeah, he was telling me some of the accomplishments that he's done is that when you log into Linode, they use, to get your serial terminal, they use another KVM virtual machine called Phoenix that is an employee of Linode to optimize Phoenix to actually change TCP/IP traffic into serial console traffic, so you can actually use a serial console on a machine with a virtual serial console. So trippy. And everybody's going, huh? This is the real world, folks. This is the stuff that you're going to have to go learn about to get those jobs, because he's making, he didn't tell me, but I was making a guess that he's over 250 grand a year. $250,000. What? How do you do it from the web? Yeah, how do you do it from the web? You know, but yeah, there are ways, there are easier ways, but when you look at solutions, always consider the possibility of how do I scale it? You know, I'm a strong believer in pilot projects. You can prove your point, but if it doesn't scale, it doesn't matter. So you got to make sure it's scale. Okay. So now we're talking about these ways to put multiple operating systems on a computer. This one, Zen, is the granddaddy of them all. It's been around for ever. I think it was one of the first ones out. This is how Amazon run. Understanding how Amazon cloud services work, and you understand Zen, there's a very good synergy. Okay. So it's like trying to fix electronics and not knowing what electricity is. Okay. You can do it as long as you do things just right. Okay. Now, what I'm talking about here, we use this term virtual machines to put different operating systems on hardware. Okay. The virtual machine term predates that. It goes way back to the early days of computing, that when you run a programming language, it takes a chunk of memory and creates its own temporary virtual machine that mimics a CPU. This is how you can take Perl and run it on Windows, or I'll use Python. It's a better example. You know Python, or you're familiar with it. You can take Python and install it for as many different operating systems you can think of, and it still works the same. That's because of the virtual machine that it instantiates when you say, run my code. It creates this virtual machine, and it's a chunk of memory. You can debug that using the debugger, GDB. And I believe Python is a register-based CPU, but the one in this category that I haven't put up there yet is WASM. This is a stack-based computer, and you'll get into stacks and queues in your next programming class. Stack, when you look at, anybody played with Rust and WASM? You better. It's the future. Think of it as the operating system is now not your computer. The operating system is now the cloud, and you run your stuff in the cloud. So you convert your code, EM script, and you're going, what are you talking about? Let me show you. This is such a cool demo. The guy that did this is he's one of my heroes. Linux in the browser. This guy he's one phenomenal programmer. Okay, pick one. Let's run it in the browser. Okay, I'll pick one that's a little smaller. Let's use this one. Browser, folks. I did not install this. Now it's going to take a while to load because it's doing a lot of magic. Follow this guy. He's a genius. He's really, really good at this. And how he gets X Windows to work inside of the browser, which is a completely different protocol. It's just fucking amazing. The guy is a genius. And if I hit right click and I'll say terminal, and I get this blank, it'll take a while to fire up. This is C source code that has been run through a tool that he wrote called vmstuff that converts C into JavaScript. The next evolution of this process is what Rust is doing, Rust to WASM. And then you're going to get optimizations of speed that are just to die for. There are games that are written in WASM that are just awesome. They're really, really fast because your browser has become the operating system. Okay. So this leads us to our next little piece, containers. Containers are a way to encapsulate individual programs. So if somebody hacks them, you drop it and redo the container. The buzzword is Docker. Look up Docker. And then when you have one or two Docker containers, it's not a big deal. But if you have Docker containers like what Gallo does, they have Docker containers for every single label that they have. And then they use a Kubernetes cluster to manage those Docker containers. Okay. Now, a lot of this you're going, oh, I don't care. That's fine. This is the real world stuff. This is the stuff that takes you to that $30,000 a year of fixing PCs to $300,000 a year to running the IT department. Okay. This is, I'm not wasting your time. Okay. And Docker shows you how to get started. Docker is platform in specific. So you can actually run Docker on Windows, Linux, Apple, whatever. Okay. And Docker is a great tool to learn because a lot of companies use Docker containers. And in the world of Windows, we have this thing called WSL. So I'm going to do this. I think I actually have it on. Let me close a few of these windows. I'm kind of getting lost. Okay, no, let's try this again. Let's search on YouTube. There we go. No, that's not what I want. I want the Windows Play Store. You can play I'm assuming most of you are on Windows. And don't you love it how they change things every release? I find that really irritating. All right, store. Just type in store and see what I get. Ah, there we go. Thank you. All right. All right, let's go back. I want to do a search. And let's search on Ubuntu. There you go, folks. Grab one of these and install Ubuntu on your Windows box. What is it doing? It's creating the equivalent of a Docker container on Windows. It works, it's great to learn, but it has some limitations, okay? They also have Kali, they also have Debian, they also have a few others that you can use. And so this is what you're looking for, the Windows Subsystem for Linux, WSL, that's what that stands for. The Windows Subsystem for Linux is a great way to get started with this idea of what virtual machines are about, okay? Even though it's not, I think it's up to version 2 now. I don't know if you need to search on WSL 2 or WSL. The installing it is not hard. You just click and it goes, okay? Isn't that great? You just click and it go. Okay, now you've been told we have this specialized Ubuntu app that we need to install on 9,500 machines. How are you going to do it? Go visit each machine? I think not. You're going to write a PowerShell script. And you'll be able to deploy everything from PowerShell. Okay. You'll have to talk to your domain admin because he won't let you have the password. He'll log in. Domain admin is like a root admin for an enterprise. And trust me, root admin credentials are really important. They give you the ability to do anything. Okay. And very few people have domain admin rights in general in any enterprise of any size because so many mistakes can happen. Okay. So this is how you do it. You can also search on how to install Ubuntu on Windows using Windows Subsystem for Linux. Find a video. Okay. There's also Kali. There's all these other things. Like people say, why do you use Linux so much? Well, one, I've kind of grown into it over the years. And let's say I want to look up something. I'll make this big. And I'm on my Linux box here. Hey, I want to look up, I want to play this game called Excise. Okay. That's all it does. It's just testing my X Windows server. And it follows the cursor. That's all it does. Kind of fun, huh? But if I don't have it on the computer, all I have to do is say sudo apt install Excise. Done. That's why I like Linux, because you can install all kinds of fun, interesting things that you can spend some time learning. Like I recently installed this. I'm still investigating it. Now it's going to tell me it's already installed because it's already there. But this new Lisp is a single binary that gives you the beauty of Lisp, but it also gives you the beauty of Bash. I'm going, oh, I need to explore that. Lisp has kind of fallen out of vogue over the years, but Lisp is what I was telling you last week. Hot code changes. Erlang is another language, Rust, where you can actually roll in a change while it's still running on the CPU. Non-trivial problems there, okay? So we have containers, okay, which basically wrap an app, okay? We have virtual machines, what allows you to install multiple operating systems on a single piece of hardware. And now I'm going to get into these things over here. This is called a package managers. And this is how you install certain things. This is becoming the new best way, which means it's going to change again. Okay. So if I say snap list here, these are all the snaps that are installed. Think of these as operating system dependent Docker containers. They run in their own memory space. And if a snap corrupts, it will not crash your system. Okay. The same with Flatpak. I don't have Red Hat installed. And then there's a new one I just learned this week is that Kali Linux has their own distribution package manager called KA Boxer, which does some really cool things. It actually wraps Docker container and certain library apps on purpose. So when you want to run a particular tool that may be dependent on some system libraries that are antiquated, it's wrapped in a Docker container. Really smart. You know, the folks at Kali, they're the penetration testing tool. If you've never heard of it and you're interested in security, you need to learn it. Okay, it is like the cat's meow when it comes to all things security. It is the tool for security. Let me bring up a browser here and go to Kali Linux here. They also offer some really interesting classes. So they make their money by selling support to these commercial versions. And it's basically another Linux. It's like Debian or Ubuntu. But these you can take, it can take hours to set each one of these up individually. They just set it up and you hit click and it works. That's pretty amazing. The one that's really spooky is this one. Let's make everybody paranoid. Maltego. This is absolutely amazing. Go read up on it. Okay. Maltego. I don't want to waste time. Maltego. Okay. And this is a commercial product and it's not cheap. Okay. You start reading through what this thing can do, all of a sudden you'll get shudders up the back of your spine. Okay. See these maps? It shows you who's connected to whom. This is graph theory. Okay. Yep. Law enforcement. That means they're also watching you. Trust, safety, cybersecurity. It's a big deal. Okay. This Maltego is scary, but there is a version that comes with Kali that lets you play with it. Okay. So this goes back. Okay. So there's my JS Linux. All right. So Kali, Flatpak, KA Boxer. Now the last piece of this puzzle is these things here. These are the protocols for remote management. Okay. How many have used RDP on their own Windows machine? Okay, 3 of you. Did you know you can remote control a Windows machine? It's called RDP. You go into Control Panel, and I've set it up on this machine, I think. You go into this PC, Properties. I just did it on that machine this morning. Remote settings, and allow remote assistance. So now you can remote control your machine. Okay. Now you're thinking, oh, what a great idea. I can have my big gaming machine and I can use it here on campus. Networking 101. And no, you can't. Because you don't have a connection that goes from campus to the inside of your router to your PC. You don't have any NAT-D traversal. Can't do it. Can you fake it? Oh, yeah. All kinds of ways around it. Okay. The other way to do this is our good friend Google. How many have heard of Google Remote Desktop? Okay, a little more numbers that time. Good. And Google Remote Desktop allows you to do NAT-D traversal. So you got a computer at home, you set up Chrome Desktop, you can come here and you can get your machine at home. Or the other way around. Advantage, disadvantage. You must use the same Gmail account. So you go to the cloud, it does the NAT-V traversal using tunnels, and it goes to your computer. Big Brother's watching. Okay? But it gives you some really easy ways to fix grandma's computer. Okay? And I've played with it on and off over the years, and it consistently gets just a little bit better. Okay? But this is a tool that's very handy for one-off. You want to control your machine from home, from anywhere. It's great for that. It's not that great when you have to deploy it to 8,000 machines. Okay. How do you manage the credentials? How do you manage the login? Headache city. Okay. Now I'm going to give you, we'll get back into those protocols in a minute. I'll talk one more tool here. RPort. I just found out about this just this month. This is the best way to describe this is think of it as cross-platform, remote desktop, no VPN, only tunnels to connect to machines either inside, behind the firewall, or remote, or somewhere else on the planet. This is a non-trivial tool, okay? But if you read about the technology that's behind it, it's simple technology. It's basically a proxy server for SSH and RDP. Well, that's pretty cool. But the way they've implemented it is they've spent a lot of time implementing it. Okay, they've thought through this. This is an exceptional tool, but doesn't have market penetration yet because it's so far outside what most people think of when they think of remote desktop. They don't consider a tool like this. Okay, this could be you learn this tool on your own and you set it up on your computers at home and you learn how to use it. You have one awesome demo for your next interview. Here's how we manage 600 computers from a single pane of glass. Click, 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 click. Oh, they all need a different patch level? No problem. Click, click. Write a script. Very interesting tool. Okay. All right. Now this top one up there. Let's talk about the those protocols. And let's see here. I think what I have to do is go to this IP address. Right to 9091, I believe. See if that talks to me. I should probably open a new browser. I didn't get a channel. Well, there it is. This is it. This is working here. I am now using something called Spice. Spice is letting me control a virtual machine that's running on my computer in the back room on KVM. Think of that in boxes. A virtual machine, I've got two computers running, one's virtual. Spice is what we call a wrapper around that virtual machine. And it gives me the ability to use the GUI to manipulate that virtual machine. Okay. Now, there's another one of these that is in here. And let's see, yeah, 9091 is what I'm going to need. Let's see if it talks. It might not talk. I didn't get a chance to test it because I'm trying to use the web proxy, the SOX proxy to get to channel VNC, but I think there's a piece that I missed. So what I will do is go up here and say new session, and notice there's an RDP session here. So I'm going to do RDP. That's for Windows. I could control that machine. I'll go to VNC so I can control my other virtual machine that happens to be running Windows 10 on this box. So I've got both KVM and VMware Player running on the computer in my office. Okay. Now I'll be quite frank with you. Most of you are completely lost. That's okay. Just take notes and go look it up later, because this is the stuff that you're going to need for your interview. Okay. And then it should prompt me for a password if it works. If not, oh, I know why. I have the port block because my, let's see if it behaves. It might work. I have a firewall and it might die on me. I'll have to open the firewall. Oh, it worked. Okay. Well, so far it's worked. Oh, it died. So let's open the firewall for those two ports, SUDO, UFW. This is uncomplicated firewall. Allow 9091. That's my web proxy. And then I will do the associated port. And now let's go back to where I was. And, oh, there it is. It woke up. Go to VNC, connect. Now it says it's unencrypted, which is true. Let's make sure I get the, oh, I have to send a password. Something went wrong, connection code. Okay, plan B. Let's open the session for RDP or VNC. This is a buzzword blizzard lecture, I'll tell you. And at port 91. Let's see if this, oh, there it is. There's my Windows 10 box. Notice I have the Kali subsystem loaded. So I am now running a virtual machine that's running a virtual machine. And yes, you can nest these things ad infinitum. So if you get a beefy machine, you can build your own domain. Active Directory server, Microsoft SQL server. You can create your web server. You can create your Linux box. You can do this. You can do that. It's an excellent way to learn how this stuff works without having to spend a lot of money. Okay. So there it is. There's my Kali Linux, and it's running on Windows. Okay. Now, those protocols, RDP, VNC, and SPICE, are the protocols that encapsulate the GUI so you can run it over your network. Okay. And those are the three different flavors. RDP is primarily Windows, VNC is primarily Linux, SPICE is primarily used on KVM, Zen, Kubernetes, cloud providers in general to wrap on virtual machines or Docker containers. SPICE is used more in the cloud than the other two. It's a little faster, a little less overhead. Okay. So, how's that for buzzword blizzard? Are your brains kind of melting?
Does the virtual machine use the CPU of the computer?
Does the virtual machine use the CPU to emulate the operating system? Did I understand that correct? Okay. The answer is, yeah, kind of, sort of. If you have a single core machine, it's going to be dog slow with virtual machines because they have to share that single core. my machine in my office has 64 cores and 256 gig of RAM. So I can allocate 4 cores and 32 gig to every single VM I use and not be resource constrained, which is why I got it, because VMs is what I do a lot with VMs. Okay. So it has to do with the horsepower of your machine. Okay. And yes, what it does is it makes an emulation. Now, on Windows, when you run VMware Player, you cannot load an Apple operating system because Apple encumbers their firmware where you have to buy their stuff. So you can't do that. But if you're on Apple hardware and you load VMware Player, you can load Windows as long as it's a legal copy of Windows. Okay. So that's, you know, some of the things they do. And there's always an option in this case of creating a dual boot machine where you have one hard drive that's running Linux, turn around and boot, and you're running Windows, turn around and boot. That's fine. It's great. You don't hurt anything. But, oh, darn, I left the file on the wrong machine. What are you going to do? Oh, nuts. Reboot. Copy to a floppy. Reboot. Copy to a floppy. That sounds kind of a pain, doesn't it? Just put it in a virtual machine, as long as your machine is beefy enough. When you use a dual boot, you can have Linux read Windows disk, but Windows will not read Linux yet. They're getting there. They're working on it. Okay. So the native low-level format that's on the hard drive, NTFS for Windows, can be read by Linux. The low-level format on Linux is ETX4 or Riser or ButterFS or. Windows does not read those on the low level yet. The ones and zeros level. Okay. All right. So it worked. That's pretty cool. I kind of wish this tool, these folks had a Spice client here. That would be really nice. That would solve a lot of problems. The tool that I'm running here is called Moab X Server, and it's a Windows tool that gives you all the Linux stuff. So if you want to do even less messy stuff, is you can actually run Bash right on your Windows machine. Okay. LS, and you can, it sort of mostly works. It's not perfect. It's basically a GUI wrapper around Cygwin, which has been around forever. It's well thought out though. So it's a pretty handy tool. Okay. But if you're a Linux bigot like me, I want all my Windows machines to look like Linux. You folks are probably Windows bigots. You want all your Linux boxes to look like Windows machines. That's fine. You can run PowerShell on Linux now, which is really cool. Okay. All right. So let's get back to a little bit. I'll talk about VPN and tunnels just a little bit. VPN, I'll have to find out why that doesn't work. I got a bug to fix. Okay. All right. Let's look up Fortinet VPN. Fortinet is one big, monstrous, huge implementation of a firewall. Okay. And when you buy the piece of hardware, big old rack goes into your computer room, it is massive. They're like $80,000. Not for home use, mind you. Even their cheapest one is like $3,000. But what it does is it inspects every single TCP/IP packet that goes into your network to make sure it's not malicious. Think of the speed that needs. It's pretty phenomenal stuff. This is a company, we use Fortinet down at Foster's. It solves a lot of problems. This is our VPN access. We have a Fortinet client we install on our machines, and then we connect to the enterprise, just as if we have our notebook connected to wireless. Okay, because it's all done with Active Directory and who has permissions to get to what things. When you are logged in wireless, this is switched wireless, you cannot get to this machine, nor can you get from this machine to your notebook, because the student Wi-Fi login credentials in Active Directory disables that. However, my login, because I'm an instructor, gives me permission to go between those subnets. So I can log in with my VPN and actually get to a wireless connected device that's hanging somewhere, or I can use it to connect to any one of these machines, which is what I do. I connect to these machines, update them, reboot them, add new software, so on and so forth. Okay. And I'm using Ansible for the time being because it works. And I didn't even talk about the tools in the orchestration space. This is just barely step one. Okay. There's a big world out there. Okay. And this is a fantastic major if you love to learn. If you get overwhelmed with learning too much all the time, probably not the right place. Okay. I personally thrive on it. You know, like I'm picking up a new tool, RPort, trying to figure it out. I go, wow, that's pretty fascinating. Now, am I ever going to use it? I might, if it solves my particular problem that I need, and I need some pretty compelling evidence to replace my VPN and Ansible. Okay. So at this point in time, the answer is, I don't know yet. I'm still evaluating. Okay. Still trying to figure it out. All right. Now, let's let your brains calm down a little bit. Okay. And do a RDP from, I can never remember where they put the client. So I'm going to remote control this machine here. Okay. So I'm going to say Microsoft Terminal Services Client. That's how I remember where it is, because they keep moving it on the GUI. There it is. Okay. So what do? Well, I put in the computer name, which is cat 231 workstation. I think that's 31 dot my dot Yosemite edu. Because you already have a console session in projects. Which one? I've got VNC open. I got Spice open. I got, I don't know. So I'm going to go close a few things. Okay. I got a bunch of stuff open. And admittedly, I am kind of lost. Okay. So let me close down some of these. Yeah, no wonder I'm lost. See, let's turn on. Oh, that's a fun little tool. I want to show you that one. Exit. So let's exit out of Moab term. You notice on Windows, your control icons are on the right. Anybody run a Mac? Nobody? Okay, we got one person using Mac, 2 people. Where's the control icons? On the left. Why'd they do that? Well, because they could. So on my Unix boxes, I put it on the left. Okay. Just because that's where it started 100 million years ago. Let me, I can do that. Let's see, I'll turn this one off. And this, there we go. Okay. I'll show you that in a minute. And connect, let's see if it connects. More, I wonder if it's because I'm recording via Zoom. Probably so. Well, anyway, what you do, what if I can do it by IP address? How do I find an IP address? What's my IP? I can walk to the machine and log in, right? But how would I do it otherwise? I'm somewhere else. Anybody? Pardon? Oh, you're gonna do a search, right? Yeah, do a search, providing it's running. But if I wanted to find the IP address, that's good because Microsoft makes cruising the network neighborhood easy. That was their main claim to fame. It was LAN managers, what we called it back in the day. And then they said, oh, the internet's never going to take off. And they said, oops, we were wrong. So let's take LAN manager, encapsulate it, and put it into TCP IP. This is why port 139 is never open to the public. Because in the early days, I could cruise the network neighborhood and see my neighbor's C drive. It was hilarious. Again, yeah, you might want to close that in the firewall. So what I'm going to do is say, okay, I want to see if I can find my IP address. INS lookup. Oh, there's two of them. So let's try 44. Okay. I have found that using the IP address bypasses a lot of the headaches that come with Active Directory. It's not optimal by any means. So let's see. I bet you the firewall isn't open. Oh, it's trying. We'll see what happens. But that's kind of what it looks like. Is you get connection and then you'll get a connection. Now, if somebody remote controls your machine, you're going to see it because it only propagates the screen on the console, right? So the screen on the console is what you get to see, okay? Error. I'll have to fix it all, figure out what's going on here. So I'll have that fixed next week. But on VNC, I can create an individual VNC session for each one of you on the Jeremy box. And you can log in with your own GUI and your own X window session by way of VNC. Okay. Now, I realize that 99% of what I'm talking about is way out there, but buzzwords, okay, and things to consider as you're learning this stuff. Here's what I'm going to tell you from the School of Hard Knocks. And I have several scars on the back of my back. Okay. I can tell you what not to do because I did it. I'm not any smarter than you. I've just made more mistakes than you. Okay. That's really the secret. When you're in an opportunity like this, where you have the opportunity to fail with impunity, take it. Because trust me, nobody wants to see you fail when you're running payroll. Right? So you're going to say, I may not need this. You may not. But I would recommend you spend a little time investigating to see how the pieces fit. Because your future is not a CPU by your desk. It's going to be the cloud. And you're going to have some sort of unit that connects to the cloud. And you'll pay for the privilege to get to your own data. It's coming. Okay. How many are Chromebook people? Oh, glad to see that. I have a Chromebook. I am not a fan. I can make the Chromebook work, mostly kind of for what I want it to do. Will I make the Chromebook my primary machine? Never, at least not now. But here's another thing that may help you if you have Chromebooks is running Linux on a Chromebook. It's called Crostini. It works. It gives you a Debian distribution. It's mostly solid. Okay, works pretty well. I have it running on mine, but it does not work on all Chromebooks. If you've got a Chromebook that you paid $79 for, it's probably not going to work. But if you got a Chromebook you paid maybe $300 for, it will probably work. And it's Crostini is the buzzword. Is the basically it is a Docker container that runs Debian on Chrome OS. And they've hacked the snot out of it because Chrome OS started life as Gentoo, a compile from source. So if you know Gentoo, you can navigate around on Chrome OS. Okay, it's got its advantages, it's got its disadvantages, but I would say for 99% of the people, well, maybe not that high, maybe 90% of the people, Chromebooks are perfect. Oh, big time. Yeah, they want to embrace and extend, just like Microsoft has done for years, just like Apple did. They basically hired all the folks from FreeBSD to write their kernel. That was when FreeBSD was around 4.8 or so, and they said, "Hey, we're going to give you more money than God. Come write our new operating system." And what are they going to say? No. Every last one of them went. So that left a big hole for many years on FreeBSD development. Okay. But it's an option. Okay. Because knowing how to get around and admin a Linux box is how you manage the cloud. That simple. Okay. All right. On that note, I will stop my yammering and turn off the recording and stop the share, end.